Would you be the jerk for leaving your best friend at the bar? We'll get into that in a bit, but first, am I the jerk for leaving my sister's wedding but keeping the bribe I was paid to attend? My brother was a jerk and has made my life heck since I can remember. I grey rocked him as soon as I understood the concept and have been no contact with him since he moved out of my parents' house. My sister was getting married. I checked to see if he was invited. He was. I RSVP'd my regrets. My sister and parents came by to talk me into attending. I said freak no. They promised me that he would be on his best behavior. I said no. They begged. I said no. They asked if there was anything they could do to convince me to go. I said that if they gave me $1,000 each, that I would return if he left me alone. They said no. I said good day. They came back with $2,000 in an envelope. I was at the wedding venue with my wife talking to my parents when my brother arrived. He came right over and called me a slur for a homosexual. My dad's head just dropped. I took my wife's hand and we went out for a night paid for by my parents and sister. We were already dressed up, so we had a fancy night out with our phones off. My parents and sister are furious at my brother. He's mad because my dad told him that he's a child and that he can't control himself. My brother is mad at me for being a baby and not being able to take a joke. I really don't care. $2,000 isn't a lot of money, but it is enough to sting. Now, maybe they'll listen when I say I do not want to be around him. My mom, however, is mad at me for taking the money. She seems to think I was being paid to put up with his abuse. I've tried explaining that it was more of a bond on his behavior. She won't listen. Am I the jerk for taking the money and leaving? Listen, I'm not going to be the one to tell OP that they're wrong. OP was right every step of the way here, and they got $2,000 profit on top of it. I would say you can't be any more right than right in this situation. Fit or Fat 1999 wrote, "Not the jerk. Did your brother leave you alone? No. Was he on his best behavior? Heck no. You kept your end of the bargain. They didn't. And I guess we know the parent who enabled your brother all these years. Mom seems to think I was being paid to put up with his abuse. Freak off, Mom." Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy getting to decide whether or not all of these people are jerks, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? That said, our next story is, am I the jerk for asking a girl what's her highest level of education? I'm from the UK. I, 33-year-old female, was at my dad's birthday party the other day, and we invited family and his close friends. My Uncle Harry, Dad's brother, recently divorced from his wife to be with someone younger, Jess. Mom and I are close to my aunt, Harry's ex, so we've already had some dislike towards Jess. Mom actually had invited Harry alone with no +1. Aunt refused to come since he was there, but their kids came, but he brought her along anyway. Jess looked super young, but she said that she was of age. Throughout the party, she shocked us with a few things she said. When we were talking about travels, she said Harry brought her to France and it was her first international travel and to a European country. Crowd was stunned and she was denying that she's technically European and UK is in the European continent. She got angry and said, "Are you lot not up to date? We left Europe ages ago." She thinks north is up. She never locks her car because no one can start it without her keys anyway. She thinks having unprotected sex when pregnant with one baby will create twins. This is just what I can remember. Just so you know, we didn't really ask her all of this. The conversation with the other ladies went over these subject matters, was hijacked by her each time, and she gave us her thoughts on that, so it's not like we were picking on her incessantly. The part where I got irritated was when my mom's friend was asking how my fertility treatments were going. I'm on hormonal drugs to induce ovulation. Jess chimed in saying that those drugs won't do any good and that I just have to eat right to repair myself. She went on and on about how her friend who is strictly vegan is on her third now. I merely asked her what her highest level of education was out of curiosity, because if she had only had high school or had a learning disability, I was going to go easy on her. Apparently that was wrong to ask. She soured and tugged Harry to leave the house. Dad is now telling me to apologize to her for being rude. Harry told him that she kept throwing tantrums about me being very arrogant and rude to her. Dad said Jess grew up in an abusive home and had a rough upbringing, as if that will explain her behavior and lack of general knowledge. Now, I do feel a teeny tiny bit bad for what I said now that I know about her troubles, but she sort of hit a sore spot about telling me what to eat as if I hadn't consulted a professional to repair myself. I'm gonna say it kind of goes on both sides here. As innocent as OP's trying to make it out to be, ultimately OP kinda said, in an indirect way, "Are you stupid?" to their face. You know, trying to dig some kind of ammunition so that they can indirectly use it against them. I do get why it got there. It was kind of a heated and inappropriate situation all around, but it also wasn't that necessary, right? St. Alvis wrote, "Gentle, everybody sucks here." I merely asked her what her highest level of education out of curiosity, because if she only had high school or had a learning disability, I was going to go easy on her. I don't quite believe this. You concede that you were already irritated by this point. The question feels targeted specifically to take her down a peg. And frankly, after suffering through all the nonsense and spewing out of her mouth, you already knew everything you needed to about her intellect. No name for me to use responded saying, "To be fair, if someone is going to tell me that my doctors who went through 8+ years of learning or training are wrong, and that my medical treatment is unnecessary, I'd also ask what their level of education is to qualify their opinion that is based on no knowledge of my medical history and/or diagnosis." This next story is, am I the jerk for refusing to take care of my sister when our mother passes? My father expects me to move my sister in and take care of her like a child or something. My sister, 37, is more than capable of getting a job and becoming an adult, but everyone always allowed her to get away with being childish. She's healthy and mentally all there, just never had a job or license. She lives with our mother, whose health is no longer great. I'm 39 and have 3 kids and work 60+ hours a week. I have no plans or interest in raising or taking care of anyone else. I already take our mother to our doctors and other appointments. I bring her meals and make sure she's taking her meds. Recently, my father's asked what I was going to do about my sis when our mother passes. She had a bad health scare and was in the hospital for weeks. He knew I was bringing groceries to my sis and making sure bills were paid while she was in the hospital. I told him she can live on the streets. He got upset and said I can't do that to her. Told him I have no plans on taking care of any more people. Did that since I was a child. Our mother's had mental health issues and his father, our grandfather, lived with us and I took care of him. Cooking meals, cleaning his room, and doing his laundry. Told him if he didn't want her to be homeless, then he can move her in. His wife won't allow that. He thinks I'm being unreasonable and cruel. I don't think she's my problem. But am I the jerk for feeling that way? Now, if OP wanted to take their sister in and help their sister, great. But I don't think in any way OP's the jerk for not wanting to take care of a 37 completely all there mentally adult. This is a person who throughout their entire life has had ultimate capability of taking care of themselves and ensuring their situation and has done nothing. It's understandable you don't want to take the bill for a 37-year-old woman child. Peony Pony posted quoting, "My father expects me to move my sister in and take care of her like a child or something. My sister, 37, is more than capable of getting a job and becoming an adult, but everyone always allowed her to get away with being childish. She is healthy and mentally all there, just never had a job or license. She lives with our mother, whose health is no longer great." They wrote, "Not the jerk. Your father has plenty of time to arrange for an apartment for your sister that he can pay for if he and your mother have enabled her entire life. Alternatively, he can research the social services she may receive like SNAP benefits, Medicaid, and Section 8 and get her waitlisted for public housing if he's worried how and where she'll live if your mother's health continues to deteriorate." OP responded saying, "I agree, but that would require him to do something about it. He prefers to throw his old family problems onto me to deal with." Our next story is, am I the jerk for getting jeans that won't fit my sister? My sister, 24-year-old female, is really upset with me, 16-year-old female. Recently, I bought a few new pairs of jeans. My normal size used to be about a 30, but over the course of a few months, I lost a lot of weight, and my size dropped to about a 25 or 24 depending on the brand. My sister had always been the skinnier of the two of us, so whenever she gained some weight, she would borrow my jeans because she was too fat to fit into her normal pair, a 26, and my clothes were the only things that would fit her without her going out to buy new clothes. Yesterday, I went to the mall with my friends and bought some new clothes because the majority of my wardrobe didn't fit me anymore. I bought a few tops, shoes, and 3 pairs of jeans. When I got home, I put the clothes to wash and went to my room. After about an hour, my sister walked into my room, visually upset, holding my jeans. I noticed she was carrying them and apologized to her because I assumed that they were done for a while. So I was hogging the washing machine and perhaps she wanted to put her load of clothes to wash. When I went to grab them from her, she stepped away, not letting me take them. I asked her what's wrong, and she asked whose jeans these were for. I told her they were for me and took them from her arms so that I can put them to dry. She replied by saying they're way too small. I answered by saying that they fit me very well and I already tried them on at the store to make sure. She scoffed and said, "Well, they don't fit me." I blinked and replied with, "Sorry, I guess you'll have to wear yours." She seemed even more upset and told me about how she gained weight and can only fit into my size. I listened and shook my head, replying that I'm not her size anymore. She left in a huff and I just watched. I'm a bit confused and I'm wondering if I'd said something wrong. A few hours later, she texted me that I shouldn't get used to my body right now because it was just puberty helping me, and that I'll gain all the weight back quickly. I don't know how to reply, and I'm honestly a little concerned that maybe I was too insensitive about the situation. So, am I the jerk? Update: thank you guys so much for your comments and suggestions. I'm reading everyone's responses and believe I didn't say anything wrong. I do feel bad because maybe my words were just triggering for her. I haven't thrown out any of my old clothes because I was planning to sort through them to see what I can keep and what I can donate. I'll take some clothes out for her and see if she wants them. I'll update if anything. The last message she sent me was a little questionable, saying, "You're going to get pregnant." Completely lost on that comment, but I'm assuming that was for someone else? I'll give her the clothes tomorrow because I know she has some stuff to do the rest of the week and needs something to wear. I really love my sister and hope she forgives me for anything I did to make her feel bad. Honestly, I do think this is just coming from a place of being upsetting for her, especially coming from the fact that if it were me, I probably would have some mental hang-up about the fact that I was always the skinnier one. And now I can't really kind of rely on that crutch to make me kind of selfishly, inwardly make me feel better. I almost wonder if OP setting clothes aside for their sister is actually going to upset them further. Like they take it like an affront, like, are you saying that I need these clothes, that I'm that big? When really OP doesn't mean anything by it, they're not the jerk. Major Barnacle 2212 wrote, "For someone with such great clothing and size advice to give out, you'd think she'd just buy clothes in her own size. You did nothing wrong. She seems to be insecure about the change in your size. Unfortunately, it's an example of someone who can't just be supportive of you without comparing it to themselves, not the jerk." Video Game Cat wrote, "I don't think she wants to be associated with buying clothes in that size because she's implying that OP is fat when she says she's too fat to fit into her normal jeans. I think OP's sister is the type of person to tell everyone that she's a certain size even when she's gained weight and is no longer that size. She's probably also used to being the skinny one and is now even more insecure now that her younger sister is a smaller size, especially because the sister got upset that she could only fit into OP's size. Like, that's your size too now." Our next story is, "Am I the jerk for not staying out of adult business and ruining my dad's marriage? I, 15-year-old female, am in a weird situation and would like an outside perspective. I am my parents, mom 37-year-old female and dad 42-year-old male, only child together, and I have a stepmom Eve, 42-year-old female. From what I was told, my dad and my stepmom were a couple first, but things didn't work out shortly after they had my siblings, and my dad eventually met and married my mom after she discovered that she was pregnant with me. My dad didn't marry Eve, and from what my aunts told me, she was really bitter about that, and used my siblings as a weapon to punish my dad and mom. My mom tried her best, but after she found out that my dad and Eve were sleeping together, she filed for divorce. During the marriage, my dad had an established business that grew, and because my mom was able to prove that she had done unpaid labor for my dad's business, my mom had some leverage within the divorce and agreed to relinquish a stake in the company for alimony, the house, and a car for herself while getting child support for me. For the next couple of years, my mom focused on me and going back to school because my dad convinced her to stop while she was taking a break from her studies to save up more money. She eventually graduated and tried looking for work, but nothing really interested her. My dad and stepmom, who had gotten married by then, were always angry with my mom for not getting a job so that they would be less alimony to pay, and tried to get 50-50 custody of me to try and reduce child support. But I never liked living with my dad full-time because I was often made to babysit their younger children. My older siblings never warmed up to me, and I didn't like the way Eve and her family would talk about my mom. Eventually, my mom got certified for a job she wanted and has been an independent contractor for years. Because of this, my mom submitted the paperwork to stop alimony, and she's been living life. Last week when I was with my mom Eve, my sister Zoe, 20-year-old female, and Eve's sisters were in the living room saying very rude things about my mom. They called her a side piece, a gold digger, and said that my older sister had to take out loans because of the increase in alimony that my mom was awarded. I walked in and called Eve and Zoe liars, that my mom was never the side piece, and my mom has been working for years, so there was no alimony. There was a big confrontation and I ended up leaving, but I later sent Eve, Zoe, and one of Eve's sisters a link to my mom's professional social media page that listed the company she worked for. Turns out my dad never told his family that the alimony payment stopped, and instead of putting the extra money towards them, he's been keeping it for spending it elsewhere. It's crazy over there, and my dad and a few of his family members are saying that I'm wrong for meddling in grown folks' business. I just hated how they were talking and spreading lies about my mom, but maybe I went about it the wrong way. So, am I the jerk? I don't think Gopi's the jerk here, and really most of the time, I would say probably 95% of the time, somebody who says don't meddle in grown-ups' business is never going to be up to any kind of good or meaning well by that comment. Trundlewitch wrote, "Not the jerk. Your dad was lying and throwing your mom under the bus in order to keep money from your stepfamily and let them sit there and slag her off while you're around. All you did was defend her, and rightfully so. He deserves everything he has coming, and I wouldn't feel bad for people who are happy to talk crap about your mum either." This next story is, am I the jerk for not giving my sister a +1 to my wedding? Hi Reddit. I, 25-year-old female, am a winter 2024 bride, and am marrying the absolute love of my life. My sister and I have always had a great/interesting relationship. Most sisters would know. One day you start fighting because she wore your clothes, and the next day you're having Dunkin' together, typically sisterly things. Well, my sister has always been, to put it frankly, a pick-me girl. She has no friends that are women because, and she says, she sees them as competition, and she likes to be friends with boys. She'll only date rich men, and refuses to settle for less. A little bit to that later. My sister has not had a relationship last longer than 2 months, and she always has a new guy on her shoulder. My mother and fiance were recently talking about this before I sent out my invitations. I had mentioned since our venue was on the smaller side, we didn't want strangers in our wedding, nor did we want them in our wedding photos. My mom had made a comment about how anyone my sister would bring would be a fling since she currently was not in a relationship. When we went home that night, I brought it up to my fiance. We'll call him Bertram. I told Bertram that I really did not want a complete stranger in my wedding pictures, and certainly not someone my sister would have only been dating for a few weeks, maybe a month. Well, just this past week, Bertram and I sent out our wedding invitations and they read, "We have reserved X seats in your name." So for example, for my fiance's family, his reads, "We have reserved 4 seats in your name." When my sister received her invitation, hers read, "We have reserved 1 seat in your name." And boy was she upset. She called me and told me that it was not fair that she could not bring a +1. I mentioned to her that she didn't have the best track record with men, and that Bertram and I really didn't want some random person nobody would talk about in our wedding pictures. She said that I was selfish, and that since our wedding was towards the end of December, the 29th, she had 6 months to find a boyfriend, and that it would be a serious relationship. Now here, I might have gotten mean, but I told her I would seriously doubt if she found anyone, given her track record for the absolutely worst men alive. As I mentioned before, rich men who think buying gifts will excuse cheating and lying. She got upset, hung up, and said she will be attending my wedding with a boyfriend of 4+ months because she will find one. Am I the jerk for not giving her a +1? And would I be a jerk for considering to uninvite her altogether? I don't really blame OP. From what I've kind of picked up from reading a lot of stories about weddings, the general consensus I see from a lot of people are, you deserve to have the wedding your way, especially considering this is a more intimate, smaller venue. The important thing is, you don't want total strangers there, kind of regardless. It's also a bit weird and disingenuous for her to argue, "Look, I've got 6 months. I'll find somebody in the next 4+ and we'll shackle up and it'll be so serious, perfect for your wedding." Oh, okay. Thanks for negotiating that, sis. Active Anteater 1884 wrote, "Info, I don't understand why you feel your sister's date has to be in your wedding pictures. I mean, can't she bring a +1 and only she appears in family photos? DirectSet8770 wrote, "You got a point, but I mean, look at how she's reacting about this. Imagine if she makes a scene at the wedding about them being rude and excluding her boyfriend from pics. I feel like she's going to try and make this wedding about herself and not her sister, the bride." Our next story is, am I the jerk for not calling out my family for being sexist towards my wife? I, 26-year-old male, moved from Pakistan to the US 6 years ago and met my wife, 24-year-old female, 2 years later. We've been married for a year and are expecting our first child. She's a third-generation Pakistani-American Muslim who had little exposure to Pakistan or other Pakistani people before meeting me. We're both non-practicing Muslims. I visit Pakistan yearly to see my family. I used to go alone while we were dating since my parents didn't know about us, but once we got married, I told them. Surprisingly, they accepted her easily. This year, my wife wanted to come with me to explore her roots, inspired by YouTube vlogs about northern Pakistan. We had discussed her coming before, but I'd mainly told her negative things about the country, how sexist it is and how poorly women are treated, which is true and one reason I left. Honestly, I was also a little embarrassed about her finding out where I grew up. I was pretty poor in Pakistan, living in a bad part of the city, while she's from a wealthy American family. Yes, it's a douchey thing to say, but I was embarrassed. I told her she could come but would need to cover up, hijab, and hide her opinions from my relatives. She said her online Pakistani friends told her hijab wasn't necessary, especially if you're from the upper middle class or upper class, which most of her friends are. I agreed that she didn't have to wear hijab, but she should wear shalwar kameez, traditional Pakistani attire, and be prepared for a lot of stares. We landed in Pakistan. Upon arrival in Lahore, she was overwhelmed by the pollution and the large welcoming party of relatives. The next day, she went for a walk alone without telling anyone, causing panic as it's uncommon for women to go out alone. My parents advised her, but my father's tone was harsh. She was upset by the stares and my father's reaction. I told her I had warned her about this. During our stay, some relatives made sexist comments about hijab and a woman's role in marriage, mostly when women were alone. They said things like, "You should start wearing hijab, it's compulsory in Islam," or "You should take care of your husband well/serve him." A religious auntie said, "The Prophet said the woman who talks back to her husband won't even smell paradise's scent," when she saw my wife talking a little rudely to me. These comments were made by female elders when the women in my family and she were alone, so I couldn't intervene. My wife told me about these incidents after we returned to the US. Honestly, I wouldn't have stood up for her there anyway because there's no way I could change those people's opinions. I just wanted to spend the short time there peacefully and come back. Now that we're back, she said I should have stood up for her, and she felt like an object there. I said I had warned her of what would happen, but she didn't listen. She's still mad after a week, accusing me of not standing by her. So I think OP's the jerk. They explicitly said this is a place that has a very sharp culture. I mean, I don't know what else OP could have said short of, "Listen, you literally cannot expect anything else but sexist comments, at least compared to what you're used to." I mean, it sounds like OP really did inform them and warn them every step of the way. That is just how life unfortunately is there. Desert Song Lala wrote, "Not the jerk, per the details in this post. Yes, the character limit can be challenging. You took extra steps to describe how her experience would differ from her friend's experience. She took an ethnocentric position, evaluating other people's and cultural practices according to the standards of one's own culture. Thus, she's holding to a silent treatment, believing you should have stood up for her. This ethnoc issue is associated to the term ugly American tourist for a reason. The only thing that may have helped, which I observed, was to tell her specifics. You can expect to be told XYZ by people in my family and extended community. This is their perspective, and you and I will not challenge it because it will be to no avail. We are visitors, thus their beliefs, practices, and opinions, which differ from ours, is to be received but not challenged. These are not topics of discussion to introduce what you think is right." She's experiencing cultural shock, and it's double difficult since her preconceived view of what it would be was not the reality. In terms of your family, she may have represented things that are wrong when folks move to and raise children in America. Info, Prior to traveling, did you disclose you grew up and your family is still pretty poor? When she mentioned her friends told her hijab isn't necessary, especially if you're from the upper middle class or upper class, did you clarify should would not be a poorer area and her wearing a hijab is the cultural norm, thus she should plan on wearing one? OP responded saying, I actually mentioned that in the original post but had to cut it because of the character limit. We were poor growing up but are very upper middle class now. All of my siblings work good jobs and I also send money back to my parents regularly, which after conversion is a lot there. We don't live in a poor area anymore. It's somewhere in between common residence and very posh areas. And I did tell her that the experience of her friends who've always led a rich life in Pakistan is very different than mine. And even though my family is doing well now, money hasn't really changed the mentality of my parents and other relatives, most of which are still lower middle class. Our next story is, am I the jerk for buying my daughter a new phone after she broke hers against my wife's agreement? Last weekend, me, 44-year-old male, wife, 43-year-old female, son, 14-year-old male, daughter, 12-year-old female. We went to see a waterfall last weekend. My wife likes to take pictures quite literally everywhere, so she asked my daughter to take her pictures. Well, we were on the walkway thing when she asked, and my wife made her take a picture from a certain angle. An angle where she was holding her phone off the walkway, and she dropped her phone into the waterfall. My wife got mad at her for it and said she wasn't going to get a new one until her next birthday or Christmas. So this upcoming December or April of 2025. I thought that was kind of ridiculous because she dropped it doing something she told her to do. My wife said she should have been more careful. I went to the Apple store on my way back home and bought her a new phone. When my wife found out, she privately expressed her upset at me by silent treatment and a 10-minute lecture, not argument, on why she's right. Am I the jerk? I think OP's really not the jerk here. There's two very important details for me here. The first is, like OP said, the wife told her to do this thing which can put the phone in jeopardy. I mean, it's off the ledge over the side. The second, she is 12 years old. Unless your daughter is an absolute aspiring Olympic gymnast, they probably don't have the greatest of dexterity, and kids make mistakes at 12 years old. You're gonna punish a kid for half a year or even more because they accidentally dropped a phone doing your demand? I Am Irene quoted, I thought that was kind of ridiculous because she dropped it doing something she told her to do. Then added, yep. Your wife isn't being reasonable. She probably would have gotten upset if your daughter refused to take the picture too, and she's being really immature about you doing right by your kid. Not the jerk, but your wife? Next time, make sure she hands over her phone for photos she wants taken. That way it's her crap at risk, no one else's. OP responded saying, if they refused, she would take their phones or find her way to clap back. We're working on it. Our next story is, am I the jerk for leaving my best friend at the bar after she grabbed my plate and refused to give it back until I apologized? My friend, 24-year-old female, and I, 24-year-old female, have been friends for over 4 years. We'll call her Mia. This incident happened towards the end of February this year. Mia and I had decided to meet up for drinks and tapas to catch up, after we hadn't seen each other since the beginning of January. Everything was going well on the girls' day out until Mia started getting tipsy. I had shown her a picture of the Valentine's Day setup my boyfriend had done for me 2 weeks prior. I don't really post on socials anymore, so this was her first time seeing it. Her whole aura completely changed. The conversation started getting confrontational, and Mia asked why I'd not been checking up on her, and how I'd been putting our friendship on the back burner. She accused me of not being able to balance a boyfriend and my friendships. To add more context, when I'd seen Mia in January, it was during her stay at a mental health center. She had mentioned needing a breather, so I picked her up from the facilities and we spent a day by the beach. After this day, our WhatsApp conversations were sparse with me checking if she's still alright, and vice versa. Early February, I had a familial issue I was dealing with and completely went quiet on all my acquaintances and friends. This was excluding my boyfriend, who I basically live with at this point. I'm guessing she saw the Valentine's Day pictures and thought, clearly you were present enough to celebrate that. Back to the girls' day out, her mood is now completely flipped. She grabs the plate of food I'm eating from and says, "You're not getting this until you explain why you abandoned me." Mind you, the people around us at the bar are looking at us now. I tell her this is very immature, send her my portion of the bill, and leave. She calls me multiple times after I leave and texts asking, "What's up?" She eventually sends a text a couple of days later, apologizing for her behavior. I guess my mistake was responding to the text 4 days later accepting the apology, because we have not spoken since. I don't think OP's the jerk, and I would almost say them not responding after OP accepted the apology might not be a bad thing. At the very least, at least it didn't get contentious again, and at the worst, maybe they're leaving room for OP to maybe reach out and, if they want to, engage and see if there's any kind of friendship to be salvaged. Or they're doing OP a favor and just leaving them alone and moving on with their life after being rude like that. The unfortunate thing is, you don't really know unless you reach out again, if you're interested. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy Am I the Jerk Here story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.